Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Puri Raja Acharya Stotar Shata Shri Srimad Bhagavatam Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Puri Raja Acharya Stotar Shata Shri Srimad Bhagavatam Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchinandana Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunatha Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Hardas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vaisali Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kul Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Maya Gordam Ki Jai. Shri Vidadam Ki Jai. Gangamai Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai. Bhakti Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Gurunath Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. ISKCON Dharma Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Salaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Pramanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayana Namaskritya.
Narayana Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatam Vyasa.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayam Nivridaya.
Tato Jayam Udiraya.
Nasta Preshu Bhatreshu.
Nasa Preshwa Bhadrishu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhakti Naishtiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the foremost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. In loving service under the personality of Godhead, to whose praise he transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right, good morning, everybody. All three of you. So today is, what's the date today? Today is the 6th? Yeah.
6th of July.
Yeah, July 6th, 2025. And we're reading Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order. Chapter 29, talks between Narada and King Prajinibari. And we'll be doing verses 12 and 13. So we'll do, I'll do verse 12 and then we'll do 13 together. So, yeah. And it's, I want to welcome you, Parameshwari Mataji, right?
Yes.
Oh, welcome. I'm so sad I missed your talk last night. I had to work in the restaurant, but I'm looking forward to hearing you tonight. So, thank you so much for coming. All right. So let's see. I'll do 12 and then we'll do 13 together. Apano Yamaharotra Chitramanto Ahudanam Vidyar Her Dakshina Karna Utharo Devahu Smrita. Translation. The city called Apana represents engagement of the tongue in speech, and Bahudana is the variety of foodstuffs. The right ear is called the gate of Vidyar, and the left ear is called the gate of Deva. Okay, so text 13. Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Avritam cha nivritam cha
Shastram panchala samhitam
Shastram panchala sangitam
Vidyaryanam devayanam
Vitriyanam Nivayanam
Shrochach Trutha Dharad Rajet
Shochach Shrutar Harat Vrajit
Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Shastram panchala samhitam
Shastram panchala sangitam
Vidyaryanam devayanam
Vitriyanam Nivayanam
Shrochach Trutha Dharad Rajet
Shochach Shrutar
Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Shastram panchala samhitam
Shastram panchala sangitam
Vidyaryanam devayanam
Vitriyanam Nivayanam
Shrotrach Trutha Dharad Rajet.
Shochach Shrutar Harat Vrajit
One more time. Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Shastram panchala samhitam
Shastram panchala sangitam
Vidyaryanam devayanam
Vitriyanam Nivayanam
Shrotrach Trutha Dharad Rajet.
Shochach Shrutar Harat Vrajit
Here are the mics. Okay, please check.
Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Shastram panchala sangitam
Shastram panchala samhitam
Vitriyanam Nivayanam
Vidyaryanam devayanam
Shochach Shrutar Harat Vrajit
Shotrach Trutha Dharad Rajet. Right. Anyone else will try?
Can you show me in Hindi? Maybe that would be easier for me.
Scroll up, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Pravritam cha nivritam cha
Shastram panchala samhitam
Shastram panchala samhitam
Vitrayanam devayanam
Vidyaryanam devayanam
Shrotrach Shrutar Dharat Vaje.
Shotrat Shruta Dharad Rajet. All right, very good. Okay, we'll do word for word. Pravritam,
Pravitam.
the process of sense enjoyment.
Process of sense enjoyment.
Cha,
Cha.
also.
Also.
Nivritam,
Nivritam.
the process of detachment.
Process of attachment.
Cha,
Cha.
also.
Also.
Shastram,
Shastra.
scripture.
Scripture.
Panchala,
Chala.
wait. Yeah, Panchala, oh, Panchala. Samnityam is described as Pitaryanam, going to Pitarloka. Devayanam, going to Devaloka. Shrotrat, by hearing. Shrutadharat, by the companion name Shrutadhara. Rajat, one can be elevated. Okay, translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Narada Muni continued. The city spoken of as Dakshina Panchala represents the scriptures meant for directing poverty, the process of sense enjoyment and fruitive activities. The other city, named Uttara Panchala, represents the scriptures meant for decreasing fruitive activities and increasing knowledge. The living entity receives different kinds of knowledge by means of 2 ears, and some living entities are promoted to Pitraloka, and some to Devaloka. All this is made possible by the 2 ears. Okay, purport. Oh, please repeat. Narada Muni continued. The city spoken of as Dakshina Panchala represents the scriptures meant for directing poverty. The process of sense enjoyment and fruitive activities. The other city, named Uttara Panchala, represents the scriptures meant for decreasing fruitive activities and increasing knowledge. The living entity receives different kinds of knowledge by means of 2 ears. And some living entities are promoted to Pitraloka. And some to Devaloka. All this is made possible by the 2 ears. Okay, purport. The Vedas are known as Shruti, and the knowledge received from them through oral reception is called Shrutidhara. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, one can be promoted to the planets of the demigods, or to the planets of the Pittas, forefathers, or even to the Vaikuntha planets, simply through the process of hearing. These things have already been explained in previous chapters. Okay. Om Jnanatimrandasa Janjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapyatam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Jivam Savadetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Shakti Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vanchakopa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namaste Jivanande Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Sniti Sila Gyana Tvatam Nirvana Paskita Manam Gyana Prita Radiation All right. So this the first verse had no purport, and then this one had a very short purport. So I was going to do 3 verses, but as I was preparing, I realized actually there's a lot to say about these 2 verses because it talks about hearing, and hearing is the foundation of our spiritual practice, right? So in these verses, Narada and King Prachinabhari are talking, and Narada Muni had been telling King Prachinabhari about this allegory of the city of 9 gates, which represents, the soul, us, living in the body. The city is the body. And King Prachinabhari had a little bit of difficulty understanding the allegory the first time around, so now Narada Muni is kind of doing an overview of the whole allegory of the city of 9 gates. And so these particular verses is talking about the senses and their objects, and particularly the ears. And so with our ears, we like to hear so many things. We like to hear beautiful music. We like to hear the birds sing in the morning. Like, how beautiful is that, right? When right before the sun comes up, right, the birds start getting really active and you start hearing them chirping. It just sounds so beautiful, right? And then at night, when we're going to bed, I don't really hear them so much around here, but when I lived in a more green place, you'd hear a lot of like crickets and things at night, right? And they make just beautiful noise at night when the sun's going down. Alternately, we also like to hear things that are maybe not so beautiful, like, oh, did you hear that so-and-so is now dating so-and-so, right? Or oh my goodness, did you hear about the war across the world, right? Or what are the neighbors up to? Can you tell me? They got a new car, or their child got in trouble at school, right? These are things that we all like to hear, whether they're beautiful or not so beautiful. There's a saying that music soothes even the savage beast. Have you heard that saying? You never heard that? You've heard that? Okay. Well, one person, you've heard it? Yeah. So yeah, music soothes even the savage beast. The idea being that music is so beautiful that even a beast enjoys it, right? So hearing is so powerful. This is how we first learn to communicate, right? By hearing, and then we repeat what we've heard. And we can actually hear when we're in the womb before we're even born. It's, anybody that's had a baby or knows a little bit about babies, they can tell you that babies actually recognize the voices of their mother and their father, or the people that have been around the mother while the baby was in the womb. The baby will recognize those voices and will pay special attention to those ones that they recognize, right? And it's even possible, according to some scientists, to teach babies in the womb. A friend of my aunt, he was a pediatrician actually, and he wrote a very popular set of books. I forget the title now, but it was basically teaching you how to start teaching your child in the womb, right? Teaching them various things, Yeah, it was before Baby Einstein, but yeah, now it's Baby Einstein, right? There's these whole series of DVDs and things, programs to play for your baby in the womb. I've seen, pictures of mothers, they put headphones over their womb and play their baby things. And this is supposed to help the child become, develop their brain early and become more intelligent. And so that's how powerful hearing is, just in the material sense, right? It's also said that when we die, our hearing is the last sense to go, right? It's also a common occurrence that people that are in a coma, right? People that are in a coma, they're not able to respond to outside stimuli. but then when they finally come out of the coma, they will say, oh, yes, I remember you talking to me. I remember hearing this. I remember hearing that, right? Because you can still hear. Personally, I remember I heard that, hearing's the last to go when we die. And I had my brother, he passed away, and I was there when he passed away. And I remember, even though he was completely unresponsive, just, kind of whispering in his ear, goodbye, I love you. And, because I felt like he could hear me, right? And so this is all ways in which hearing is so important. Srila Prabhupada says, just by hearing, we can go to the heavenly planets, we can go to Pitraloka, we can go to the Vaikuntha planets. But what exactly is it that we should be hearing? What the mass of people like to hear is like popular music, right? Pop music. Is that what we should be hearing? Some of the pop music, especially a few years ago, it was like the #1 song was incredibly vulgar. It was an incredibly vulgar song, and just about sex life. And is this the kind of thing that we should be hearing, even though it's being blasted out all over the airwaves? When I was growing up, they started putting warnings on records and CDs. It said, like warning, like parental advisory, explicit language, I think is what it said on it. And this became like a really big deal. And some of the musicians were arguing, well, this is censorship. But the parents were arguing, well, no, this is degrading our children. And so that was a very big deal. And that's because what we hear actually affects our consciousness. And so these parents that didn't want their children listening to these explicit songs were doing so because they did not want their children's consciousness to be degraded by this. And actually music, like popular music, has been used during the War on Terror. In hostage situations, our military actually blasted the rock band Metallica for hours on end to torture the captors and try to get them to give up, right? And so they just blasted this rock music at them. And then it was said that Metallica some years later had put out a statement that they wished our military would stop using their music as a form of torture because they didn't advocate violence. And I thought that was a little bit funny. And this is what we hear affects our consciousness. So out of the 9 processes of devotional service, the first one that's listed is Shravanam, right, which is hearing. That's the foundation of all of our devotional service. So we should be hearing Krishna Katha, because all the stuff that we're hearing, that's a form of association. And association is so important, right? If I want to become a doctor, I associate with doctors. They teach me what I want to know. If I want to become, an actor, I associate with actors. And, they teach me what I want to know. And so hearing is a very important part of association. And if we're just putting that pop music or, movies into our head, it says you take garbage in, then garbage comes out, right? And if we're hearing garbage, then we're going to speak garbage. So if we're hearing Krishna consciousness, we're hearing Krishna Katha, then we're going to speak Krishna Katha. So let's see here. So I have a few quotes here about the power of hearing. So this first one is from the 4th canto. It's actually at the end of this chapter, towards the end of this chapter that we're on now. And it says, "My dear king, in the place where pure devotees live, following the rules and regulations, and thus purely conscious and engaged with great eagerness in hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that place, one gets a chance to hear the constant flow of nectar, which is exactly like the waves of a river. One will forget the necessities of life, namely hunger and thirst, and become immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion." All right, so this verse right here is telling us if we are hearing and talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so not the neighbor down the road or some rock star's girlfriend, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we'll even forget the necessities of life, like our hunger, our thirst, but even greater, our fear, our lamentation, our illusion, right? There's so much fear in the world right now, particularly in the United States, right? There's a lot of fear going on. There's some political things that are going on, and people are very frightened by this. But if you are hearing about Krishna, this can alleviate our fear. This can alleviate the illusion that we are these bodies, and this is really important, right? Because how can we come closer to Krishna if all we're doing is being in a state of fear, right? So what is the purpose of life? So, what is the purpose of life?
Just to not to harm anyone intentionally, physically, mentally, and doing all the deeds which eventually will lead us on the path of Krishna.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So the purpose of life is devotional service to Krishna. Yeah. And exactly. So how do we start that? We start that by hearing. So in the third canto, it said, in the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and to the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation. And thereafter, he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. So if the purpose of life is devotional service to Krishna, this is how we started, by hearing about Krishna, by discussing about Krishna, right? And that's when our real devotion and our devotional service take place. It's when they start, when they begin. So I've heard it said that the right ear is for hearing spiritual topics, and the left ear is for hearing material topics. And so those of us that have taken second initiation and received the Gayatri mantra, it's spoken into the right ear by your spiritual master. And I tried to find some scriptural basis for this, but I really couldn't find any. But it's kind of anecdotal. It's mentioned anecdotally in so many commentaries. So now I wanted to talk a little bit, just give a few examples of stories that illustrate the importance of hearing. So the first person I wanted to talk about was Sukadeva Goswami. So Sukadeva Goswami, he's the one that is narrating the Srimad Bhagavatam to King Parikshit, right? So in his previous life, Sukadeva Goswami, he was actually the personal parrot of Srimati Radharani. And he used to take messages from Radharani to Krishna. Very sweet, right? And so when Srimati Radharani was about to leave this material world and go back to the spiritual world, she told her parrot, who was named Sukha, to stay here. But of course, the parrot, he did not want to stay. He didn't want to stay here. He wanted to go with her. But Srimati Radharani assured him that wherever the transcendental pastimes of the Lord were being narrated, then he will not feel separation from her, right? So the parrot, Sukha, he started looking for a place where he could hear Krishna Katha, Hari Katha. And so finally he went to Mount Kailash, the place where Lord Shiva and Parvati lived. And Lord Shiva, he was reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parvati. And the parrot Sukha, he hid himself in one of the bushes nearby. And So Lord Shiva's narrating the Bhagavatam to Parvati, and every few minutes, Parvati, she would go, oh, yes, make some kind of indication she's listening. And so at some point, she actually fell asleep. But the parrot, who's hiding in the bushes, started kind of copying those sounds she was making. So he's listening, and Lord Shiva was narrating the Bhagavatam, and then the parrot's just going, oh, yes, And so Lord Shiva doesn't realize that Parvati had fallen asleep. And so when Lord Shiva was finished, Parvati woke up towards the end of the Bhagavatam, and Lord Shiva asked her, well, how did you like the narration? And she said, that she didn't know. She was so sorry, but she fell asleep. And so Lord Shiva was like, what? I heard you going, oh, yes. And so he realized that somebody was hiding. And so he starts looking around, and he sees the parrot in the bushes. And so Lord Shiva, he was thinking that maybe the parrot wasn't qualified to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so he started chasing the parrot. And he wanted to kill the parrot. And so he starts chasing the parrot. So the parrot starts flying away, trying to get away from Lord Shiva. Meanwhile, the parrot reached all the way to the hermitage of Srila Vyasadeva, right? And so when the parrot got there, Srila Vyasadeva was also narrating Bhagavatam to his wife. And so while hearing Bhagavatam, Srila Vyasadeva's wife, she kind of yawned. She was like, and the parrot just flew right in her mouth. And so because of that, then Lord Shiva, he's chasing him, goes over to the hermitage of Srila Vyasadeva, and Lord Shiva told him what happened. And Srila Vyasadeva said, anyone who hears the Srimad Bhagavatam gets free from the cycle of birth and death. And Vyasadeva commented, since the parrot had become eternal by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, he could not be killed. And so Lord Shiva went away. So now the parrot is still in the body of Srila Vyasadeva's wife, and took the form of a baby within her womb. And so that baby was Sukadeva Goswami. And so Sukadeva Goswami, he did not want to leave the womb. He stayed in the womb. I've seen some narrations of the story said 16 years, some said like 11 years. But suffice to say, he stayed in the womb much longer than the traditional 9 months. And he didn't want to come out because he was didn't want to get entangled in Maya, right? He didn't want to get entangled in illusion. And finally, he heard some Krishna Katha, right? And he came out. And so what can we learn from this story? One is that, how powerful just hearing is. Suka the parrot was so distraught at Radharani leaving, but just hearing the Bhagavatam was enough to lessen that feeling of separation. And then also, later Sukadeva Goswami goes on to narrate the Bhagavatam himself, right, to Parikshit Maharaj. And so that's a great example, because what we're hearing when we hear this Harikatha, we should share it with others, right? We can give it away to everybody else. And also we should hear the Bhagavatam from great personalities like Lord Shiva, like Srila Vyasadeva. We should hear the Bhagavatam from devotees of the Lord and not just from any old person, right? So I just thought that was a really cute story. So some other examples would be Prahlad Maharaj, right? Prahlad Maharaj. So there's two interesting kind of illustrations of how important hearing is in this story. So before Prahlad Maharaj was conceived, his father, Hiranyakashipu, he was like walking through the forest one day and he heard this bird and it was saying, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, right? And this had kind of like bothered him a little bit or annoyed him or something. And so it was just stuck in his head. And so he came home and he's, telling his wife, him and his wife start to be intimate. And while they're being intimate, he's telling his wife, I was walking through the forest and I heard this bird going, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And at that moment, that's when Prahlad Maharaj was actually conceived, as he was saying that to his wife. And so because at the moment when Prahlad Maharaj was conceived, his mother was hearing the name of the Lord, right? Prahlad became a very amazing devotee, right? And then later, as Prahlad's growing in the womb, we know Hiranyakashipu, he was this great demon, right? He was causing so much havoc, in the world. He wanted to be immortal. He was doing so many austerities to get that. He was a great demon. And when it was found that his wife was pregnant, some of the devas were like, we need to kill her. She's going to give birth to another demon. We need to kill her. But Narada Muni appeared and said, no, wait a minute. She's carrying a great devotee of the Lord. You can't kill her, right? And so then he took Hiranyakashipu's wife while she's, with child with Prahlad Maharaj. And so Narada Muni starts speaking so much Krishna Katha while Prahlad Maharaj is in the womb, right? And he's speaking all these glorious things about Krishna, right? And Prahlad in the womb was hearing this, and he was becoming just an even greater devotee. So he came out, he was completely self-realized and a devotee of the Lord. And so that's two examples there, right? One with the bird, and just Prahlad Maharaj's mother hearing the words Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya at the moment of conception was enough to purify her womb enough to give birth to a great devotee, right? And then also hearing the narrations of Narada Muni in the womb, Prahlad Maharaj also was becoming enlightened from within the womb. So I mean, there's like a double whammy in that story about how important hearing is. Another example I have is Rukmini, right? So Rukmini, she was supposed to marry Shishupal, which was a friend of her brother's. And Shishupal, for some reason, ever since he was born, he just hated Krishna. He just didn't like Krishna. He did not like him at all. And Rukmini, she didn't really want to marry Shishupal. She had heard so many nice things about Krishna. People telling stories about Krishna, all his opulences, and just how wonderful he was. And she had never even met him, but just hearing those stories, she fell in love with Krishna. And she thought, I want to marry Krishna. I don't want to marry Shishupal, right? And so just from hearing these stories narrated by other people about how wonderful Krishna was, she ended up writing a letter to Krishna and saying that she wanted to marry him and that she was getting married to Shishupal, and perhaps he could come and kidnap her, right? And so that's what Krishna did. He came and he kidnapped her, and they got married, right? And so that story just illustrates that how powerful that hearing is, right? Just by hearing other people talking about Krishna, she fell in love with him and then was able to be with him, I mean, just how amazing it's that. So another example is Narada Muni himself, right? Narada Muni, he once in one of his lives, he was a Gandharva, and he was, I think his name was Upabarna, I think. And he was a Gandharva, and so he was kind of like today we would I always picture him as like a rock star today, you know, he's got so many fans. But he was singing beautiful melodies, but he went to this like kirtan festival, and he had upset some devotees because he was singing and chanting about some of the demigods and doing kirtan about some of the demigods, and the kirtan should only be about the Supreme Lord. And so they had cursed him to take birth in the material world in a lesser kind of body, you know, because in his Gandharva body, he was so handsome, he was so talented, and so they cursed him to take birth as a Shudra. So he took birth in his next life as the son of a maidservant. And his mother, being a maid, she would serve these sages. They would come every year and stay for some time, and she would take care of them, she would serve them. And so naturally, her son was helping also. And so he was hanging around the sages and would hear them talking. And they're talking all this Krishna Katha, all this enlightened talking. And Narada Muni, he's not Narada Muni yet, but he's just sitting there listening and becoming more and more attracted. And then also he took the remnants of their food they were eating with their permission. And he became a great devotee because of that. And then became the Narada Muni that we hear about all the time. And Narada Muni is one of my favorite people in the Bhagavatam, because you always know something interesting is going to happen when Narada Muni shows up, right? He's always coming to help further things along in some way. You know, sometimes people call him, he's an instigator, he instigates things. But you know something is interesting, it's always going to happen when you see Narada Muni pop up. So him just listening to the conversations of those sages is what allowed him to become this great devotee that he is now. Now he travels around all over multiple universes and sings and chants about Krishna. And then another example is Krishna and his father. I tried to get a number of how many cows Krishna would take care of. And so the number I found was like 900,000 cows. 900,000. I mean, that's a lot of cows, right? And Krishna, when he plays his flute, he has a little flute song for each individual cow. And so that cow hears their little song, and the cows, run to him. I mean, I can't remember 900,000 anything, But Krishna, of course, he can remember 900,000 individual little melodies for each particular cow, and he remembers all their names. And those cows hearing that flute is really, the cows hear that flute and they're drawn to him, right? It's so powerful. And so then the last thing I wanted to do was read this really beautiful part from the 10th canto about Krishna's flute and the gopis. It's so beautiful, and so I'm just going to read that, and then we'll end there. So this is the 21st chapter of the 10th canto. The gopis glorify the song of Krishna's flute. Sukadeva Goswami said, "Thus the Vrindavan forest was filled with transparent autumnal waters and cooled by breezes perfumed with fragrance of lotus flowers, growing in clear lakes. The infallible Lord, accompanied by his cows and cowherd boyfriends, entered that Vrindavan forest. The lakes, rivers, and hills of Vrindavan resounded with the sounds of maddened bees and flocks of birds moving about the flowering trees. In the company of boys and Balaram, Madhupati, Sri Krishna, entered that forest, and while herding the cows, he began to vibrate his flute. When the young ladies in the cowherd village of Vraja heard the songs of Krishna's flute, which arouses the influence of Cupid, some of them privately began describing Krishna's qualities to their intimate friends. The cowherd girls began to speak about Krishna, but when they remembered his activities, O king, the power of Cupid disturbed their minds, and thus they could not speak. Wearing a peacock feather ornament upon his head, blue carnicara flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and the Vijayanti garland, Lord Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forests of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. O king, when the young ladies in Vraja heard the sound of Krishna's flute, which captivates the minds of all living beings, they all embraced one another and began describing it. The cowherd girl said, "O friends, those eyes that see the beautiful faces of the son of Maharaj Nanda are certainly fortunate. As these two sons enter the forest surrounded by their friends, driving the cows before them, they hold their flutes to their mouths and glance lovingly upon the residents of Vrindavan. For those who have eyes, we think there is no greater object of vision." Dressed in a charming variety of garments upon which their garlands rest, and decorating themselves with peacock feathers, lotuses, lilies, newly grown mango sprouts, and clusters of flower buds, Krishna and Balaram shine forth magnificently among the assembly of cowherd boys. They look just like the best of dancers appearing on a dramatic stage, and sometimes they sing. My dear gopis, what auspicious activities must the flute have performed to enjoy the nectar of Krishna's lips independently and leave only a taste for us gopis, for whom that nectar is actually meant. The forefathers of the flute, the bamboo trees, shed tears of pleasure. His mother, the river on whose bank the bamboo was born, feels jubilation, and therefore her blooming lotus flowers are standing like hair on her body. O friend, Vrindavan is spreading the glory of the earth, having obtained the treasure of the lotus feet of Krishna, the son of Devaki. The peacocks dance madly when they hear Govinda's flute, and when other creatures see them from the hilltops, they all become stunned. Blessed are these foolish deer, because they have approached Maharaj Nanda's son, who is gorgeously dressed and is playing on his flute. Indeed, both the doe and the bucks worship the Lord with looks of love and affection. Krishna's beauty and character create a festival for all women. Indeed, when demigods' wives flying in airplanes with their husbands catch sight of him and hear his resonant flute song, their hearts are shaken by Cupid, and they become so bewildered that the flowers fall out of their hair and their belts loosen. Using their upraised ears as vessels, the cows are drinking the nectar of the flute song flowing out of Krishna's mouth. The calves, their mouths full of milk from their mother's moist nipples, stand still as they take Govinda within themselves through their tear-filled eyes and embrace him within their hearts. O mother, in this forest all the birds have risen onto the beautiful branches of the trees to see Krishna. With closed eyes, they are simply listening in silence to the sweet vibrations of his flute, and they are not attracted by any other sound. Surely these birds are on the same level as great sages. When the river hears the flute song of Krishna, their minds begin to desire him, and thus the flow of their currents is broken, and their waters are agitated, moving around in whirlpools. Then with the arms of their waves and the rivers, with the arms of their waves and the rivers embrace Murari's lotus feet, and holding on to them, present offerings of lotus flowers. In the company of Balaram and the cowherd boys, Lord Krishna is continually vibrating his flute as he herds all the animals of Vraja, even under the full heat of the summer sun. Seeing this, the cloud in the sky expanded himself out of love. He is rising high and constructing out of his own body, with its multitude of flower-like droplets of water, an umbrella for the sake of his friend. The Aborigine women of Vrindavan are becoming disturbed by lust when they see the grass marked with reddish kumkum powder. Endowed with the color of Krishna's lotus feet, this powder originally decorated the breasts of his beloveds. And when the Aborigine women smear it on their faces and breasts, they feel fully satisfied and give up all their anxiety. Of all the devotees, this Govardhan hill is the best. Oh, my friends, this hill supplies Krishna and Balaram with their calves, cows, and cowherd friends with all kinds of necessities: water for drinking, very soft grass, calves, fruits, flowers, and vegetables. In this way, the hill offers respects to the Lord. Being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, Govardhan Hill appears very jubilant. My dear friends, as Krishna and Balaram pass through the forest with their cowherd friends leading their cows, they carry ropes to bind the cows' rear legs at the time of milking. When Lord Krishna plays on his flute, the sweet music causes the moving living entities to become stunned and the non-moving trees to tremble with ecstasy. These things are certainly very wonderful. Thus narrating to one another the playful pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he wandered about in the Vrindavan forest, the gopis became fully absorbed in thoughts of him. So I just thought that was so beautiful. And that power of hearing Krishna's flute, I mean, it was just so sweet. It had an effect on everything, on the trees, on the rivers, on the animals, on the gopis, everybody, right? And so we'll end there, and then just remember that how important our hearing is, and to be very careful about the kinds of things we give our attention to, right? Because if we hear and chant about Krishna, then without a doubt we'll get to see him, right? So if there's any comments or questions, please give them now, and if not, we can just end here. Yeah. Okay, all right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.